No, it's okay. Good evening, everybody. Thanks very much for having me along.
Is that okay?
Yeah, this is great. Thanks very much. I always point out before I start a lecture to groups that I'm not a historian or a genealogist, that my professional and academic training is as an archivist. I'm a master's in archives and records management. So when I was asked to do this talk, I kind of wanted to do a little bit of research into genealogy myself and how exactly it works. So maybe at the end, if I have gotten this bit of research wrong, I appreciate if you let me know as well, so I learned something as well. I looked at two pieces of academic work, one by two researchers, Duff and Johnson, and one by Yackel and Torres. And the first piece set out the stages of genealogical research that people carry out. The first being collecting names of family members, the second being gathering detailed information on those individuals, and then the third, the highest kind of stage, the last stage, is finding out about the society in which those individuals belonged, because they didn't exist in a vacuum. And this tied in with the other piece of research that I read by Yackel and Torres, which listed different levels of, I suppose, research understanding that people have. The first level being domain or subject knowledge, which I thought tied in with collecting the names of family members. The next level being what's called artefactual literacy, which tied in with the gathering of detailed information on the individuals. And then the final level, archival intelligence, I thought tied in with finding out about the society in which people belonged, really kind of rich contextual stuff. And this archival intelligence is really kind of based around an understanding of the generation of records and how they're kept, where they're kept, and what information is in them. So I think what we do in the military archives, what we're very proud of because of our expertise, is that we provide that what we call archival intelligence to researchers, and that we can guide them in kind of understanding. So people will have their understanding of the person they're researching, a bit of the information about that person, but then we can really input the archival intelligence, the really specialist stuff, and show you what record generating practices were going on that could help you to really broaden and contextualize that research. So with that in mind, I based this lecture around, rather than just giving you a list of genealogical resources in the military archives, I've designed it to be more of a kind of holistic explanation of the archive itself, what we have, what we can do, what we can offer, and how we work. So hopefully that will be of some use. And if that is completely wrong, please let me know at the end, maybe if I've gotten that completely wrong. So the military archive itself, we are the newest piece of real estate in the approximate 40-acre campus in the heart of our mines, that is Calbrua Barracks. Calbrua Barracks was formerly Portobello Barracks, taken over by the Free State in 1922. In 1952 it was renamed Calbrua, from Portobello Barracks to Calbrua Barracks. I'll start with an overview of the archive itself. It cost approximately 5.5 million to build the new archive. One part of the building was a renovated hospital block built in the 1840s, and the repository itself was built from scratch. It's completely compliant with PD 5454, which is the international guidance standards document for the building of archival and museum repository buildings. So I think I'll talk you through kind of what it's like when you arrive at the military archives. So this is our new building. This is the reading room itself. So when you arrive at military archives, you'll come into the front of the building. As soon as you come in, we have a duty archivist's desk, where if it's your first time, you will get your registration document. We have facilities into the left or into the right where you can come in, sit down, read over our rules of the archive. We also provide people with things like coat hangers, somewhere to leave their coats, umbrellas, and we provide lockers free of charge as well, so you're comfortable conducting your research. Once that's done, you've filled in your reading room form. You will present it to the duty archivist here, which is easy to find. You'll come into the reading room itself. Our reading room again is purpose built. It seats 16 researchers at once. We also have access to the duty archivist's hatch. On this side, this is where, when you fill in your docket to receive the documents you wish to research, the duty archivist will pass them out here. You'll take a seat then. We also have additional material here, resources like on Cussentor and Toglock magazine, that kind of thing. Irishifagul, if you want that to support your research. And finally, and this is what we find is of most interest to people doing family history, genealogy, that kind of thing. We have a room at the back of the reading room, which you can see here, and we call that the noisy room. So as where in the main reading room we ask people to keep quiet and let people conduct their own research, in here we have facilities for people to get together, and we often find that people doing family history will come in together in a group. So we have facilities that come in here. We also have a small research library which we have, which you can see here, which they can use to supplement their research. We have internet access here, and we have access free of charge to Irish Newspaper Archive. We have Ancestry, it's Find My Past, and one or two other online resources for research. You can see we have the table there with a few chairs around it, so if people want to sit down and go through material with their family, they can do so. And that's just kind of a brief overview of the research facilities, the reader facilities in the Military Archives. We are an official place of deposit as defined by the National Archives Act, and I think this could be of interest to people in terms of understanding the kind of records that you can find with us. What this means is that we are the official place of deposit under the Act for the records of the Defence Forces, the Department of Defence and the Army Pensions Board. So what this means is that whereas other departments of state are required every year to accession their records that are 30 years of age to the National Archives, we have permission, under legal permission, to retain those records in the Military Archives. So that's the level of records that you get in the Military Archives. It is the equivalent for the Defence Forces and Department of Defence as you would get from any other Department of State housed in the National Archives. So that should give you an idea of the kind of records that we have. I often point out, and I'm sure as people who do research regularly, you know this yourself, but I often pointed out the difference between the archive and, say, the library or the museum or anything like that. I mean, there is often an assumption that the archivist and the historian are synonymous. I think this is inaccurate. It's kind of akin to assuming that the librarian is a novelist or a university researcher. But as I said before, our speciality is understanding the provenance of records, cataloguing them, making them available, preserving them, with always keeping that original provenance and original order in mind. And the records that we have are one of a kind, unique and individual, unlike those in a library. Some other services and roles carried out in the Military Archives. Because we're the only specialist, I suppose, cultural unit, you call us, within the Defence Forces, other kind of jobs fall within our remit, not just documentary heritage preservation. Records management, because of the degree of education in archives and records management that we've been given. We deal with freedom of information and legal queries internally for the organisation. Military culture and heritage. We have a lot of three-dimensional objects that come into us as well. These come in either as private collections, which can be very useful to people who are doing genealogy, especially if you have a relative who accessioned a private collection to us in the past. These would often come with a lot of three-dimensional objects which you would traditionally associate with being in a museum, but again we have, I suppose, a moral impetus to take these items in as well. Academic research, we'd have a lot of academic research conducted in the Military Archives, everything from secondary school research right up to the highest level of academia, genealogical research, as I mentioned, that I'm here to talk about. We also have media and public engagements and lectures as well. Part of that, especially the public engagement and lectures, is because we are an official place of deposit under the Act. That puts an obligation on us not only to acquire and preserve, but to make available those records. And part of that is our outreach activity and making sure that anybody who asks, or if people want to have a lecture or a talk or presentation on it, either externally or in our own lecture room, that we do that. Staffing and qualifications. We are staffed by 6 military personnel who I've listed here. Myself and the Commandant are all Masters in Archives and Records Management. 3 of our 4 enlisted personnel all have either certificates in Archives or Records Management from UCD, and 1 member of staff is still to complete the certificate in Archival Management this year. We also have civilian staff. Hugh, Lisa and Noel are the 3 civilian staff who are working in the Military Archives main. They have over 8 years of experience each, so in terms of being able to give advice and direct you on your research, they really are very well positioned, knowledgeable and experienced. We also have the Military Service Pensions Collection Project. Is anybody familiar with the Military Service Pensions Collection, which is an ongoing project? It involves the cataloguing, digitalisation and release in tranches of applications for pension for service during the revolutionary period. We are currently in the process of recruiting a new project manager. Our previous project manager retired in the middle of last year, and we've just got to go ahead now to carry out a competition to replace the project manager on that project. We often get asked, actually we get queries as to when the next tranche of material is coming out. A lot of people are nodding their heads there. People get a bit annoyed about it, and that's understandable, but that project manager is being put in place now at the moment, and we'll have more information on that in the coming months. Again, here we have 3 fully qualified archivists. The reason I go through this is because, and I talk about the different qualifications that the people working in the military archives have, is sometimes I find records management or archival management can sometimes be seen as an afterthought, and it's just here, somebody look after these records and just stack them in a room somewhere. But I think that highlights the seriousness with which the organisation takes our job as a nameplate deposit, and making sure that we do acquire, preserve and make available the records of the Defence Forces in as fitting and proper a manner as we can. We also have a team of volunteers. We have 5 volunteers at the moment. These are primarily ex-Defence Forces personnel. They come in on a part-time basis and they're cataloguing various projects for us. I think you'll find in any archive as well that volunteers are an integral part of the team, because there's so much material in our archive or in any other archive that you're never going to get around to cataloguing every single piece, especially when with us we're constantly taking in material from the Defence Forces every year, releasing it under the 30-year rule as well. So having volunteers, especially ones with a military background who have, you know, they're subject matter experts in particular fields and they understand the particular documentary system that we use in the Army, they understand Army forms and Army books, they're able to really catalogue the stuff properly for us. In terms of the building itself, some of the stats, the admin block and reading room is a hospital block, a former hospital block built circa 1842. Our archival space is now 1,472 square metres, of which 972 is repository. During the building, 7,000 metric tonnes of earth was removed and 3,248 metric tonnes of concrete was poured into the new building. It cost approximately €5.5 million. We have approximately 21.6 kilometres of shelving, if it's all measured out straight, to house our approximate 67,950 archival boxes. Our repository is climatically controlled in line with international best standards, the guidance document being PD 5454. So if you do come to do some research with us in our new campus, this is the campus itself. This is the old hospital block that I spoke about. Downstairs is the reading room. This is our purpose-built repository, which descends to one level underground as well. This area here is the old guard room for the barracks. It stopped being used as the guard room in 1992. We currently have the barrack museum here, and we have a purpose-built lecture hall here. We can fit about 40 people in here, as well as having space for small exhibitions. Just out of interest, back here is the yard that Francis Sheehy Skeffington and McIntyre and Dixon were shot during Easter week as well. So it's a rather sombre part of the tour. And just a side note to if you do visit the visitor centre itself, it also kind of sets the context within which the military archives is placed. This is an architect's plan of the archive itself. You can see, as I said, the repository itself with its 21.6 kilometres of shelving descends below ground level as well. So we have a lot of storage capacity and space here. This is the building itself. It was a former hospital block. This is the west side of the building, pre-renovation. Currently the reading room and admin block. And this is the east side, pre-renovation. This large open space here is where the repository itself is now housed. This is a photograph of the building of the repository itself. This is where I mentioned the 7,000 odd metric tonnes of earth was removed. So this is that being built, and the 3,248 metric tonnes of concrete was poured. Again, you can see after the concrete was poured, the foundations of our new facility being built. Inside the repository was built, we have a lot of features in this which are very particular to archives, and they really are best practice and in compliance with PD 5454, that international standards document that I mentioned. You can see, for example, down here we have the tracks along which our electronic stackable shelving roll. We have pillars holding up the floor because above us we have another repository, so these are reinforced with their concrete reinforced steel. You can see the air conditioning ducts here. The air conditioning runs 24/7, and we monitor climate, we monitor temperature and humidity to make sure that our records are kept in ideal conditions for long-term preservation being 100 years or more. We also have, as you'll see later on, a drain built into the floor here as well. In the event of any kind of emergency or a flood, it'll assist the egress of water as quickly as possible. This is the construction of the upper floor of the repository. Again, you can see the tracks built in, the reinforced concrete pillars with steel. This is the construction of the reading room itself. You can see, in order to preserve the building, we used the original floorboards and as much of the original building as possible. Another thing that was important throughout the building that we found was consultation with archivists throughout, because architects are experts in buildings and being architects and designing them, and we were the experts in preserving material. And I think one thing that, as an example, that the consultation with archivists throughout was important for was the architect wanted to have a 1 hour fire rating for the repository. We insisted we wanted a 4 hour fire rating, so now the repository has that 4 hour fire rating, which is best practice for archival storage. Pre-renovation, this is the site of the current reading room. This is the site of the current reading room. Pre-renovation, you can see the condition of the walls, the ceiling, and this is it now. As you can see, it's the original wood. We have wooden shelves, individual desks, comfortable area. It's lit. It's not too bright, so it's so as to be damaging to documents or items on display there. So it's a pleasant, I think, place for people to come and conduct their research. This is the former hospital block pre-renovation ground floor stairs. Again, you can see the conditions we had, and this is it now post-renovation. Again, the first floor stairs, pre-renovation, you can see the condition of the wall still and the stairs, and post-renovation. Again, it's worth noting that we did keep the original floorboards. They were treated and put back in place. Staff facilities in the former military archives building. As I mentioned, we have 9 staff, another 3 with the military service pensions collection, and 5 volunteers. You can imagine what it was like if everybody was in trying to have a cup of tea in this area here that was as crowded as you think. We now have a new staff area. I know this is a nice to have. It's probably not overly relevant to people who want to conduct research with us, but I mean, I think in terms of how we treat our archivists as well, I think it's important that they have somewhere that they can unwind for half an hour, have a cup of tea and get back to doing their job as best they can. The archive itself, this is something I'm really interested in actually. This was our big military archives at Cartlon Vila to sign that we have in 2 foot tall letters outside the building. Something that I always think is important, and it's best, it's kind of thing that's taught in modern academia as well, is that archives, as well as being a site of national memory, they're not just an area for people to come along and do some nice research, and it's not just, I mean, all about the past. An archive in its ideal state is an agent of accountability of the state and advocacy for the people of that state. And thinking in archival academia is that the building itself should reflect the importance and the significance of the records that are held therein. And I have some pictures of some other archives here now to show you as well. If we look at, for example, the military archives here, you can see we're unapologetically the military archives. We reflect the history of the Defence Forces and the country, both in terms of Irish and British administration, and the fact that we're in this old building which was used during British times and from the National Army up to the present day. We also have a new repository which was built in keeping to keep the design with this, so it's respectful, it's unapologetically the military archives. Something we're proud of as well, though, is the fact that we do have this welcoming area here. When you do come along, you have a large open area of glass, and then inside the design it's primarily wood, so it's warm, it's a welcoming place for people to come to, because we're the custodians of the records. They're the records of the people of the Irish state, so it's only right that people feel when they come along, this is a place for us to come and research, and that people are welcome to come to. So if we look at, say, for example, the National Archives of the United States, I always think this is a really interesting example. The kind of the symbolism of this, what this says to people, I think, with it being built in a large granite block in the style, I suppose, of an old Roman temple. It's something you find referred to within academic discourse as it's the kind of, it's almost as if the records themselves are being, it's almost a homage to the records themselves, and they're almost put above reproach, you know. So I don't think that's what an archival space should be about. They shouldn't be, I suppose, museumised, or if that's the right word. The archives should be there, and people should be able to go in and read them and research and bring up new information as it comes up. It shouldn't be, this is the military archives, this is the story of the Irish Volunteers and the Defence Forces up until the present day. It should be a place, like I said, for advocacy of the state and accountability of that state as well. Advocacy for the people of the state and advocacy of that state as well. And if you look inside the US National Archives as well, you can see it's, I mean, I think there's symbolism and semiotics in the kind of the symbols and the way it's laid out as well. It says something to a person when they walk in there. If we look at the National Archives of the UK and Kew, I think this is a different kind of a design. It's a lot more, I think, like a modern academic campus, like somewhere like UCD as well. I think it looks like somewhere that will welcome people in. And I think that's a good, I think that's a really good balance to strike as a national archive. It's somewhere where I feel comfortable going to research. Our own National Archives in Bishop Street, again, we come under the National Archives Act, so I'm not going to say anything negative about it, but I think in terms of the aesthetics, the symbolism of it, what it says as the National Archives of the Irish State, I think it kind of says a lot about, something. I'll let you draw your own conclusions about that. I'm very aware that this will be recorded as well. So, but again, I think even the fact that, say, for example, a National Archive is placed under Art, Heritage and Gaeltacht rather than Department of, say, on Taoiseach, that says something as well about the importance and the significance of those records, because as I said, archives are not just historical records from 100 years ago, they are the contemporary documents of the state as well. And it's the place that they're made available for public perusal, you know, where again it's about accountability. Again, this is the research, the reading room in the National Archives as well. It's a functional, comfortable looking reading room. I think our own reading room though itself takes that a step forward. We're lucky that we had the funding and we had it designed from scratch. But I think even the reading room itself should be a place that people feel welcome. It's their place to search the records. So that's just my little aside on the importance of the symbolism of archival buildings. In terms of where we keep our material itself, this was our old file room. Not ideal, but it was the best we had at the time. You can see things aren't great here. For example, the fact that records had to be stored at floor level, that's not ideal. We were monitoring the room, and it is within acceptable parameters in terms of the temperature and humidity, but again, that was kind of a passive thing. It wasn't an active thing that we have now where we can physically, mechanically control the climate. We also had, and we still have, 26 containers dotted around Cattlebrew Barracks as well, which were storing material. We are in the process of emptying them bit by bit and moving them to the Military Archives main repository. That requires us to close the reading room for a week at a time every month, pick out collections and move them as a block, and make sure that we update our finding aid as well so we can find the material as well, because if you have over 60,000 boxes, it's very important that your finding aid reflects it when it's moved, because we don't want boxes to go, not to be lost, but they be misplaced. We have to go and find them again, so we don't let that happen. And we do that by doing it slowly, meticulously and methodically. This is the removal of material to our new repository. You can see this was purpose built. You can see that the lower shelf is off the floor. This is our electronic stackable shelving, so it was a big job, it's a big ongoing job to move the material, but it's in progress. And these are boxes that they are on the shelf now. You can see that they're much more neat, much more orderly storage as well, and each bay and each shelf is numbered, so it's much more easy for us to find it. In terms of the storage system itself, if you're into storage, it's really interesting. It's electronic stackable shelving. As I said, we have over 21 kilometres, 21.6 kilometres if you measure the shelves out. They can be moved by the LCD tab, which you saw me press here on the shelf itself, or they can be moved by a tablet, which means if one of our archivists or assistant archivists are in the archives, they're working on the small cherry picker that we have to get to the very top of the shelf, they can wheel it out, they can use the Wi-Fi to move the shelf and move back in without having to come down, press the button and move back up again. So it's all about convenience and speeding up our workflow to make records available to people. They can also, and this is something we're asked, in the event of a power failure, they can be pushed manually by one person in that event. So they are finely balanced, and it doesn't damage them. It's part of the design that they can be physically pushed as well in the event of a power failure and needing to get to records in an emergency. We also have our fire. This is something we're really kind of like, our fire suppression system. It's an FM200 fire suppression system. In the event of a fire being detected in 2 places in the archive, these cylinders here will release this FM200 gas, and they will fill the cubic capacity of the archive with the gas. An alarm will go off beforehand to make sure people evacuate as quickly as possible. That gas will then suppress the fire while not damaging the documents. It's not a cheap system. It is best practice for any archive, but I mean, considering we recently took in the Allen collection, 14,000 documents, mainly concerning the revolutionary period, but going back to the 1200s. Actually, we have items going back to I think Bronze Age times within that, 1 or 2 items that are really old. But if you can imagine that collection has a 1916 proclamation, a half proclamation printed by a British soldier as a souvenir, and a 1918 proclamation. I mean, for the value of those 3 documents alone, I mean, if anything was to happen to them, it pales in comparison to the cost of maintaining and servicing this fire suppressant system. In terms of our workspaces, just a quick snap so you know where we work, where our archivists work. We have a large open plan office on the first floor over the reading room. This was taken while we were moving in, so it's not as it is at the moment. We have a bay for our civilian archivists to work. Our quartermaster is over here, who is our logistics man. I'm here as the 2IC, so I can keep an eye on everything. And we have 3 military archivists at a desk just up here. Internet computer here as well, so we can access external material as well. We were officially opened by Antucro Michael D. Higgins on the 26th of April 2016. And here he is with Commandant Padraig Kennedy, who presented here, I think, last year or the year before. Former officer in charge of military archives. He's now serving in Lebanon. His former 2IC, Captain Stephen McCone, is now Commandant Stephen McCone, and he's currently my boss. And again, this is one last picture of the official opening of the archive itself. So that kind of gives you an idea of who we are, what we do, what we have to do it. Now, in terms of conducting research in the military archives, has anybody here conducted research with us before, or even online? Some have. We basically have, I suppose, what we call 3 levels of material in terms of their accessibility. We have material that is fully digital. This is where the finding aid and the digital version of the document are available online. So your Bureau of Military History, Military Service Pensions Collection, 1922 census fully available online, Republic magazine, Irish Volunteer magazine, that kind of, the maps, plans and drawings collection. So your finding aid and your digital material is available online. We have material then where the finding aid is available online. That's the catalogue, but you have to book an appointment to view the material. So again, this is kind of a halfway house between going to the full, I suppose, workload of having and cost of having material digitised properly, which involves having a high resolution TIFF file made, an access version in JPEG made, and having it structured in such a way that it reflects the archival catalogue structure of the material. So where the catalogue is online, you can peruse it from the comfort of your own home or your iPhone or any way you want, and then you have to book an appointment to come in and view the material. And then finally, reading room only. This is where the catalogue is only available in the reading room, and you have to come in and go through that in the military archives itself. I think what we had, do you remember at the start I was talking about kind of archival intelligence, the real understanding of the provenance and the record generating activities that made the records. I think coming into the reading room is where you really get that best, where you can talk to the archivist, because it's something we're proud of, the fact that we do have, you know, time that we can speak to people and advise them. And what I found, and maybe you can, again, correct me if I'm wrong at the end, because I want to learn about genealogy as much as anybody, you know. So what the research that I read found was that there seems to be a preference for people conducting research, family history research, genealogical research, to consult secondary sources like archivists or other people who've conducted the research rather than going to the catalogue itself. So has this been people's experience? Do you prefer to speak to the archivist or speak to the person managing the records, or do you just prefer the catalogue or to conduct your own research? It is nice. I find it as well, if I'm researching anything, it's nice to talk to somebody really and get an understanding of it. Researching genealogy and individuals in the military archives. Just some facts and figures. We have 167,000 local defence forces personnel listed in our LDF rolls in the emergency. 36,005, these are approximate numbers of course, 36,500 personnel on the 1922 National Army Census, 16,500 personnel on our Civil War prisoner ledgers, and we also possess a substantial amount of record of service on our enlistment and discharge registers. That actually 1922 Army Census, I think, is a very interesting one if somebody had somebody in the Army at that stage, because for anyone who doesn't know the background to it, with the foundation of the National Army in 1922, having moved from the structure of the volunteers to a national army as such, we needed to get figures of how many people we had, how many people needed to be paid, what amount of weapons we needed, etc. So that census was taken on a day in November 1922, and it's a snapshot of everybody who was in the Army at that time. And I think, personally, again, not being a genealogy specialist, is as a starting point, if you have somebody in the Army at that stage, I think that's a really good place to start, because you get a name, a number and a location, which I think are good starting points for research. Oh yeah, the National Army Census 1922, again, I've just mentioned that. Sorry, it was 12th to 13th of November 1922. The Military Service Pensions Collection, I think this really fits into what I call the archival intelligence, really finding out about the society in which the person belongs and really getting the texture and the nuance to the person you research, to their life. The Military Service Pensions Collection 1916 to 23 is one of our most important archival collections. Circa 300,000 files relate largely to the administration of claims for pensions, gratuities and allowances made under various Military Service Pensions Act and Army Pensions Acts. They were made in respect to service rendered and or injury arising from military service rendered between 16 and 23, and it also relates to claims from dependents of the deceased. This is a phased release, and as I mentioned, there is a new project manager to be appointed in early 2017. The Bureau of Military History as well. I think this is another good one for researching individuals, because it is searchable by individual name, of people who gave statements and people who were mentioned in the statements. Again, established by Oscar Traynor TD in 1947, it consists of 1,773 witness statements, 334 sets of contemporary documents, that's pamphlets, ephemera, that kind of thing, 42 individual photograph collections, 210 photographs of Easter week sites taken subsequently by the Air Corps. I have to point out they are not photographs from the time, they are taken subsequently by the Air Corps, as some people who are doing research are disappointed to find out. 12 voice recordings as well, which are available online, and a collection of press cuttings. Other genealogical resources that we have: personnel files. We do have digitised versions of all enlisted files up until I think 1984 and 1985, what we call the PMS, our Personnel Management System, took over. So after that date, we're able to access them in a database online. It's an internal one we use for the Army. We also have officers' files. We have all paper files actually physically in situ at the moment. The enlisted files, they are still in existence, we just have them in different areas we need to take them in. Some of those are legacy issues from the standing down of the Western Brigade, so we do have some personnel files that loan that we need to migrate to our facility, so we have the physical versions with us. We have some still with brigade records, which is in Capt barracks as well, so we are in the process of consolidating all that and bringing it to us. But in terms of personnel files, again, they're a great place I think to start for researching an individual. We have to point out, for data protection reasons, we only make them available to the subject themselves if they're still alive, or to next of kin. We do ask for, if you can scan and send us a copy of a birth cert or something that can prove your lineage as next of kin, and we do make those files available. The local defence forces roles from the emergency period 1939 to 1946. These also include notes on whether individuals continue their service within our force because of the Artefactual afterwards. So again, that can be a useful step. You might know that somebody was in the LDF, but if you want to check the roles and see if they went on afterwards, that might be another way to continue your search on the person. Enlistment and discharge roles we have from Army number 0 or 1 or whatever the first one is. Well, I don't think it's 0, I think it might be 6 or 8 or something, right up to 6,000, up to Army number 68,000. We have overseas nominal roles, and we also have third-party sources available to people who come in and research with us free of charge. They are Find My Past, Irish Newspaper Archive, and a few other ones that are duty archives that we'd be happy to advise you on and give you access to. If you do wish to contact us and come in and do some research, our address is Capt Barracks, Red Mines, Dublin 6. Our phone number is 804-6457. You can find us, you can email us at militaryarchives@defenceforces.ie. The whole duty archivist panel will get that and they'll get back to your query. We have our website, militaryarchives.ie, on which those online resources that I mentioned are available. And if you're into Twitter, please follow us on DF Archives. It's not so much a research resource as it's something we use just to keep in touch with people and let them know what's going on in the archive. That's everything I have then in terms of our material. I think I took about 40 minutes there, is that? We're not running over time now.